Back in April, I decided to get down and finally install a new hardware mod to my PlayStation 2. This is something that I've been meaning to do for over 2 years now and have even had the required parts and tools to do it. However, due to other things happening in my life, I didn't have the time, the energy, or the interest to commit to the project until now. This modification allows a small number of slim consoles to read games off of a hard drive. The original fat models had the ability to be connected with a hard drive. This function was originally implemented with the goal of assisting some games to save certain files on it in order to shorten load times. Sometime later, hackers developed software that could take even more advantage of this feature and allow consoles to store and launch whole games directly from it. Apart from the fact that this makes playing games from the console so much easier, as one wouldn't need to be changing discs all the time or worry about damaging them, there is also the benefit of faster loading speeds. For reference, the PlayStation 2's DVD drive is rated with a speed of 5.28 megabytes per second, while the theoretical maximum read speeds from a hard drive are about 11 times higher, at 66 megabytes per second. This eliminates any bottleneck that has to do with data transfers. Now, some of you that are fairly familiar with most of the differences between the Fat and Slim models may ask, since the Slim does not have the space or connectors available to install a hard drive, how does this work? The secret is that Sony, for some reason, kept the circuitry of the IDE connector on the motherboard of the first series of Slim consoles. It was hidden, of course, but somewhere, someone discovered this and released it to the public. In this video, I will show you part of my journey of making this mod. The first thing I did when starting was disassemble the console down to its motherboard. You might notice that I also took some time to remove the BIOS battery from its shield. That's because it was dead and I wanted to replace it as well. During the process, I also removed all of the thermal pads and cleaned the motherboard. What I did after that is a bit of a hack, but since I didn't have any Slim cables, I took apart an IDE one that I had laying around from an old computer and separated the lines. I then took my soldering iron, burned the tips of the cables to remove the plastic from them, and started soldering them one by one on the points of the board. I also used soldering flux, which is very helpful. I do apologize for the poor view of the area of interest. This was my first time recording myself soldering, and I didn't hold myself to a high standard. Turning the board over to the back side is where things got really hard. Points 21, 27, and 31 were probably the most difficult part of the process, as the places in which you need to solder the cables are very crowded. We're talking about a millimeter of space in between the points of interest and other ones, and it is necessary that one does not bridge any of them. After installing all of the cables on the board side, I turned my attention over to the IDE to SD card adapter that I bought to use in this project. What I did with it is I removed its IDE metal contacts so I can get direct access to the points on its board and solder the cables there, which is more difficult and definitely not necessary, but a good idea if you want to save space when seating the adapter on the console. Anyways, after finishing with that, I started preparing for the final part of the installation by cleaning the place where I thought I'd place the adapter and making sure that all the cables have a strong connection to their respective motherboard points. You'll see me adding some Kapton tape on the board in the hopes that it'll provide some resistance in case I accidentally pull any of the cables. Following that, I started soldering the cables one by one to their corresponding points on the adapter's board. At the same time, I made sure no solder balls were connected at the top side of the board. When I finished installing the first set of cables, I had to start working on the ones that lead to ground. And by following this image, it was recommended to connect all grounds at this point. So I did. However, as I'll explain later, that didn't quite work out. I'll have to condense the events from here on out because I want to keep the video short. So, what happened next is that I basically checked if the mod is working, didn't get a positive result, and went back to check for bridging and proper contact on all points. While doing that, I noticed that one of those hard points that I mentioned earlier didn't have a good contact, so I experimented with it. I desoldered the resistor that was sitting on it, and surprise, surprise, I accidentally flinked it while trying to solder it back and lost it. After spending hours scavenging, I decided to give up and try to find a replacement. It was at this point where I was basically both feeling very disappointed with the overall difficulty of the project and shitting myself as far as what not finding a replacement would mean. My next step was to identify the model of the resistor, which was a nightmare, until I came across this file, very generously provided by multiple websites on the internet. This is a service manual. It contains all of the information a technician would need to perform a repair on the console. The file was a godsend. It restored my hope and confidence to complete the project. This is how I found out that the resistor that I needed was a 10,000 ohm, 1/16 of a watt, give or take 5%, 1005 model. With that information, I could finally start searching for a replacement part. This is where I faced another problem. I was struggling to find one with the exact specifications. After a lot of digging around, I managed to find one sole shop in the country that had these and ordered it from them. The most amazing part of this is that despite being in the opposite part of the country, the parcel arrived within 2 days, so I thank them for that. Shout out to you acdcshop.gr for not only being the only shop I could find that had these in our country, but also for getting the order out to me in such a short amount of time. You will probably never watch this video, but I do want to say thank you and that you are amazing. I will give you guys a small tip, which is something I found looking at the schematics of the console while trying to figure out the best way to install the wires to those difficult spots. If you follow the traces of all the 3 points of the resistors, they have alternative ones, where you can put solder on and install the wires there. As far as I can tell, I am the only soul online to point that out, so if anyone in the future is watching this in an attempt to get help, there you go. Alright, time to go super speed because this is getting longer than I'm comfortable with. So, I installed the missing resistor, then all the wires. It still didn't work. I desoldered and resoldered the whole thing like 2 times, and it was only by the 3rd one that I realized what the problem was. It was the software being iffy. Sometimes the SD card would show up, other times it wouldn't. To be completely truthful, it was a lot more complicated than that, but I did figure it out for my case, and I will write a list of useful tips for anyone interested in the description. Here's the moment of triumph. Come on. Fuck! Whoops. My bad. This isn't it. Here's the actual moment of triumph. It works. About time, you little twat. Holy Holy I used some super glue, Kapton tape and silicone in an attempt to do some wire management and to also make it more robust. I then carefully put the console back together, putting new thermal pads in all the necessary areas, and then glued the adapter with silicone in the area where the disk drive normally sits. For anyone wondering, it is possible to make room for such a mod without having to remove the disk drive like I did. I only did that because mine broke and I never bothered to fix it. I will admit the wire management is far from perfect, especially when compared to some other people that have done this and posted it on the internet, but this was my first time doing this mod and what I consider to be an advanced soldering project due to its difficulty with the tight spots. So I didn't aim to do everything perfectly, as I did not yet know how to do that, but since the mod ended up working, is for me and has a robust setup, I do not mind it at all. I am happy with how it came out and would be more than happy to try it again on a different console in the future. Before finishing this video, I would like to take a final moment to speak a little bit more about the PlayStation 2 and what makes it so special to me. It was my first ever console. It helped me make lots of friends and spend time with those people. It introduced me to many worlds and their own philosophies and ambitions. It kept me company when the weather was bad and I had no one to connect with. It helped me pass the time at low points in my life when personal problems took hold and I needed some way to distract myself from the things that were out of my control. It's just a device that has probably caused some short-sightedness cases in my generation, but it was also fun. It was a way to connect with people, spend time, be competitive, shit talk, and dream too, of possibilities and inspirations. Fun fact, my love for the English language began because I loved playing games and understanding what the characters were saying. By listening to them speaking and looking at the words at the texts, I learned to pronounce some of them and learned what they meant. Anyways, I am happy with how this came out and I am very proud of myself for getting it done. It was by no means an easy task, but it's the kind of thing that would make that 8-year-old kid proud. Proud to see how far he's come. Thank you.